Meeting. Are there any members of the public who wish to address us on any item that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
I wasn't there.
Okay, one abstention. Motion passes. We now move on to an exciting event, the election of our new chair and vice chair, Mr. Romick.
And I will nominate Director Haskew for chairman.
Any other nominations? Oh, go ahead. Yes, please. Wonderful. We have a nomination for our new chair and vice chair. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Ms. Haskew.
Think about it.
I can come in back.
Oh, all right.
Thank you. Good evening. So we're on to item 1.0, adopt the proposed actions to various funding resolutions.
It's the consent calendar.
Oh, it's the consent calendar.
You don't have the most.
I don't have the most.
I'll move the consent calendar 1, 2, and 3.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Do you want a hard copy or?
Oh, yeah, now I'm going to lean on the hard copy. So having done that, that's the end of the consent calendar, and we're on to the regular agenda items, and it's item 4.0, review draft of the Multimodal Transportation Service Objective Monitoring Report. May we please have the staff report, please?
Another out.
Good evening. Thank you, newly appointed Chair Haskew. It's good to have you here. I am here, Matt Kelly with the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. I'm here to present the draft 2017 Multimodal Transportation Service Objectives Monitoring Report. This is done in conjunction with the action plans. And let's see what button works here. There we go. So I'll start off with describing what an MTSO is. Most of you probably know it's a multimodal transportation service objective. They are developed as part of the action plan process, and they are basically benchmarks for evaluating the impacts of land use developments and decisions on our regional transportation network. MTSOs are supposed to be flexible. They should be multimodal. They are to a certain extent, and they should measure effectiveness of the objectives assigned for each route of regional significance in the action plan. They are chosen and evaluated by each RTPC during the action plan updates, which were last updated starting in 2013 and completed last year. And they should be measurable and quantifiable, as that's what the monitoring process is for. So just a summary of the data we've collected in the past. The last monitoring period was in 2013. We did this last monitoring in 2017. We collect intersection and arterial level of service, freeway and arterial delay index, which is basically the amount of time it takes to travel a freeway or arterial compared to free flow speed. Side street signal cycle weight, which is the amount of signals you have to sit through to access a major street like Treat Boulevard. The amount of cars using HOV lanes on our freeway system. Average vehicle occupancy, we do that on the freeways and some arterials. We do transit ridership around the county. And in La Miranda, there's a BART peak loading factor MTSO, which basically gets at the number of people sitting versus standing on the cars there in the La Miranda sub-area. And we do the duration of congestion on 680 in the Tri-Valley subregion. So these are the big ones that we do around the county. Some are done in some sub-areas, some are done in others. It's up to each individual RTPC. So we collected data on some new MTSOs or potential MTSOs this time. And basically the RTPCs will use the data we collected this time to determine if they really should be full MTSOs and how to set standards or thresholds for those MTSOs and develop actions that are associated with those MTSOs. So the 6 new ones we collected data on this time were frequency of unplanned lane closures in La Miranda, an inventory of bike and ped facilities also in La Miranda, collision frequency for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians, and that's in the southwest area of the county. Iron Horse Trail ped and bike volumes at 5 arterial crossings in Tri-Valley. Average Iron Horse Trail user delay at major arterial crossings in the Tri-Valley. Those two are related. And pavement condition on the Iron Horse Trail. So that's kind of a user experience MTSO. So we monitor all around Contra Costa as well as the Tri-Valley area of Alameda County because of the TVTC action plan down there. The blue lines are the routes of regional significance, so we're collecting data on all of those. You'll see that the Iron Horse Trail, I can't point it out because we don't have our little pointer thing, but the Iron Horse Trail is on there in the Tri-Valley. And then all the dots are our intersection monitoring locations. We monitor about 400 different variables around the county, and out of those this time, about 10% in each the AM and PM period exceeded their standards. So if the standard was level of service E at an intersection and it came in at a level of service F, that is considered an exceedance of the standard. So as I mentioned, about 10% in both AM and PM exceeded their standard. We think this was largely attributable to the growth in travel since the end of the recession, starting in about 2013, which was the last time we monitored. Implications of not meeting your MTSO or exceeding the MTSO, as I just mentioned. So an exceedance does not necessarily mean the sub-area is in non-compliance or the city is in non-compliance with the growth management program. Monitoring is intended to inform the RTPCs on the progress of their MTSOs, or basically how they're doing over time. They can track it over time and use that data to inform how they design their MTSOs and associated actions. And we have a process here for modifying or refining those MTSOs through the action plan process. That's up to each RTPC as they review these results and approach their next action plan update. So speaking of updating the action plans, that is going to happen over the next few years. What we think this MTSO monitoring report can do for them is, like I said, help them track the progress of individual MTSOs over the different monitoring periods. They can use the results to refine or even remove an MTSO if they don't think it's useful anymore. They can refine the actual standards. So if they think a standard is too stringent or needs to be more stringent, they can refine that. They can add actions to support the achievement of the MTSO. And they can add MTSOs that are more with meeting the spirit of the changes to CEQA under Senate Bill SB 743, which removed vehicle delay as a finding of significance under CEQA. So you'll notice that those 6 new measures that we monitored this time were a little more consistent with SB 743 and those changes to CEQA. And then we plan to update the 2040 forecasts of all these MTSOs. So we use this data collected this year to forecast how those MTSOs will be doing in the year 2040, and we're updating the land use in the model to projections 2017 that will allow us to forecast those MTSOs out to 2040. So the next steps are, should you recommend it, is to release the draft MTSO monitoring report to the 5 RTPCs, or the 5 action plan RTPCs. The RTPCs will then review that data and then over the next few months, and then going forward they can decide on how they want to approach their action plan updates and if they intend to revisit or refine the actual MTSOs and associated actions as we move forward towards the next action plan updates. So that's my report. Our recommendation tonight is to forward this to the authority and release the report to the RTPCs. And I can take any
Commissioner
questions.
Hudson?
Yeah, I will move that the Planning Committee approve the release of the draft 2017 Multimodal Transportation Service Objective Monitoring Report to the Regional Transportation Planning Committees for review and comment.
Comment.
Commissioner Abelson has seconded. All of those in favor? Oh, aye. And abstain? No.
No, go ahead.
No. And
I'm trying to drag it out. You're taking too short of a time.
We're going to be done in record time.
okay, well, I forgot the public comment, so I'm just going to go and make sure that it didn't look like too many more public people came in. So was there public comment we should have addressed? All right. So,
Don't get it.
yeah, all right. So
Rip it.
I think we've had a vote, and I think we've all voted aye. Is that not correct?
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
All righty, and there we are. So now we're on item number 5, and that's the release of the draft of the 2018 Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and we have another report to be heard. So,
You do.
thank you.
Good evening, Chair Haskew. Welcome. I appreciate your ascension to the chair. Yes, very regally. I'm Brad Beck. I'm one of the senior transportation planners at the authority, and together with Megan Mittman, who is on my left and your right, I'm here to ask for your recommendation to release the draft 2018 Contra Costa Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. The authority last adopted its CBPP in 2009, and since then there's been a lot of changes. There are new funding sources like the Active Transportation Program. There's new legislation like SB 743, as Matt mentioned. There's new design standards that have come out. There are new local plans like the new Concord plan and the one that San Ramon's preparing now. There's the corridor plan that El Cerrito's doing along San Pablo Avenue. They're tweaking it now. And there's a growing recognition of the benefits of walking and bicycling, such as reduced energy, fewer greenhouse gas emissions, increased activity, which is good for people's health. It also has economic benefits, those improvements. Walkable communities are associated with higher land values. The implementation of bikeways next to stores are shown to have lead to increased sales. Fewer sales, but more overall. And improving the situation for bicyclists and pedestrians leads to fewer accidents and collisions. And bicyclists and pedestrians are disproportionately affected by them. And we've tried to address all those things in this draft of the plan. One of the things we tried to do this year is, building on what we did for the Countywide Transportation Plan, do some new things with outreach. Here's a list of all the things we did, and we've got a picture of one of the pop-up events. This one was in Concord at the Farmers Market. one of the great things we thought was that I'll get to that. We learned a lot. We got a lot of comments, and these are some of the themes that came out. People wanted safety. They wanted improved connectivity. They wanted drivers to watch out for them. That was something that came up quite often. And they liked reduced traffic speeds where there's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle travel. Let me show you one of the things we did. It's the interactive mapping. People were able to go onto the website and say, I like to bike here, I like to walk here, there are problems here, make improvements here. For example, here's where people identified where they like to ride. A lot of these are recreational, but there are a lot of them places like downtown Concord, down in El Cerrito, going up to Point Pinole Regional Park. But people also showed a lot of places where they think there are improvements needed. And you'll note that there are a lot of them around freeways and along arterials, where there's a lot of traffic. And one of the things we pointed out in the plan is the need for what we call ABCs, the cross-barrier connections, and the majority of those are across freeways. The county is doing a study now that the authorities funded on how to get across one of those, which is Treat going across I-680. We also went out to the RTPCs to get their input, and we heard a lot of things on the options they favored, and they fall into the three basic categories: collaboration between different jurisdictions, prioritizing projects and areas where projects should be done, and trying to find different ways to fund projects. And now I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who's going to talk more about what's some of the nuts and bolts about the plan itself.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So we'll take you on a bit of a tour of some of the key highlights of the plan. As Brad mentioned, this is an update, so there were a lot of really solid things in the 2009 plan, and we left those in place where they were still relevant. And the things that I'll focus on tonight are really the new aspects that are different from 2009. And as Brad mentioned, a lot of that has to do with kind of changes nationally and at the state level for new tools that are in our toolbox and new philosophies and analysis procedures that we're able to make use of. So one of those key new approaches is this concept of the type of bicyclist. And I've been having this type of conversation at a lot of community workshops ever since this study came out. We'll often have a different mason jar and give people a marble as they enter the room and say, which type of bicyclist are you? And have them kind of vote for this. And it's always very consistent that this is kind of how it sorts out in terms of the percent of the population. So 1% of very few people are this strong and fearless. They're the spandex cyclists. They're the ones that are out there kind of regardless of what's out there on the road. The 7% are those enthused and confident. Maybe these people cycle to work occasionally. Maybe they'll be out there running some errands, riding to the farmer's market, something like that on the weekends. But still pretty infrequent. And then there's the interested but concerned, and I fall into this category, a lot of us fall into this category. We own a bike, we maybe put our bikes on the car and drive it to a trail, would like to ride a lot more, but really don't necessarily feel comfortable, or have kids or other reasons that kind of we're very hesitant. That's 60% of the population, and then this 33%, either they're not interested or they're just not physically able to do so. And so the question really falls into, well, how are we doing our bicycle planning? Are we planning for the 1%, the 7%, the 60%? And I think that here in Contra Costa and really kind of nationally, we've largely been planning for the 1%, the 7%, kind of that 8% of our population that feels comfortable with the type of facilities that we have out there right now for bikes. So what's been really helpful is that there's a new kind of protocol or a new evaluation criteria that allows us to rank the stress level of different facilities and be able to say, is this low stress, medium stress, high stress? And that really ports right back onto what type of cyclist are you. So if you're that interested but concerned cyclist, the stress level of a facility really resonates and could be the reason why you're choosing not to cycle right now. So that was one of the main things that we did with this update, was to run an analysis of how stressful things are out there right now and what is the potential improvement. And some of the factors that go into stress is how many travel lanes there are, how fast the vehicles are on the street, how many cars there are, whether there's a bike facility there or not. If there is, how wide is it, and whether or not there's any physical separation. Are you right up next to the cars, or is there something that is kind of buffering you from them? And then we were able to rank on a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale, very similar to level of service for cars, the A through F. This is kind of that for bikes. So level stress 1 is the lowest, most comfortable. The 8-year-old to the 80-year-old would feel comfortable riding. All the way up to level stress 4, that's that strong and fearless group. And really, in a lot of cases, a lot of the facilities that we have right now. And that was what we were able to show with kind of running this through a mapping software with those equations is right now for the facilities that we've designated as the countywide bike network, there's a lot of red, right? And this red is that high stress level of traffic stress 4. And I think that's what really went into factoring how should we change what the 2009 plan is to what the 2018 is to make sure that it's not just a sign on a street that says this is a bike route, therefore you should ride your bike here, but really if this is a key road that's going to provide network connectivity, that's going to provide access to key destinations, it should be comfortable for the 8-year-old to the 80-year-old. And in a lot of cases with these yellow and red kind of scores for traffic stress, those roads that are designated right now as the bike routes are not really comfortable for everybody to ride on. So I'll talk a bit more about some of the ideas we have to move forward on that, but first we'll shift over to pedestrians. So the kind of key update on the pedestrian side with the 2018 plan is just some mapping of these pedestrian priority zones. So the 2009 plan talked about a criteria for why a place might be a priority for pedestrians, and we've just taken that a step further and really just put those into maps. And we've tried to be very map heavy in the plan so that it's very graphical and easy to interact with, and that's the case for pedestrians. There's that at the county scale, and then we have several zoom-in versions so that they're easier to see. And the idea here would be that in the appendix of the plan is some design guidelines for ways that you can really enhance the experience for pedestrians and the safety for pedestrians, and ways to fund and prioritize those within these pedestrian priority areas. So back to bikes and some of the specific recommendations the plan has really in support of that lower stress concept. Is to point to some of the newer design guidance that's out at the federal level and at the National Association of City Traffic Officials, which is kind of the large big cities have this group called NACDA that you may be familiar with, has an urban bikeway design guide that they released a few years ago, and that's really now held up as kind of the state of the practice for how to do bicycle planning. And so this plan kind of adopts that as the bike design guidelines, as well as some of the newer Federal Highway Administration guidance that's come out. This is the new proposed countywide bicycle network that is what we're calling a backbone low-stress network. So the concept here is that every road that would be highlighted here, every trail segment that would be highlighted here, either currently right now is low stress or in the future would be. So the blue are the ones that are currently low stress right now, and then the yellow would be the projects that would happen, the roads that would be enhanced to make them low stress. And we were able to run a before and after level of traffic stress analysis. Then on this network, you already saw kind of all the reds that were popping before in terms of that high stress. So this is the after condition. So if we were to put low stress type facilities on all of those roads, you would have a range of 1s and 2s that would be showing up in the future on this countywide backbone network. And the way that we would go about doing that, as the plan proposes, is really enhancing trails or enhancing facilities that feel like trails. So there's one of the new devices that we have in the toolbox is called the separated bikeway. You might have heard of it as the Class 4 or the cycle track. There's a few different names that we're calling it. That's a device, a type of facility that wasn't kind of in our nomenclature, wasn't something they were using in 2009. But it's this concept of taking that feeling of being on a trail and putting it on the roadway. And you do that by having both some horizontal and some vertical separation. So you're physically farther away from the moving traffic, and there's something raised. So either it's a parked car, that it's the bike, and then the parked car, and then the moving traffic, or it's a planted median, or some other type of device that gives you some physical separation. So you feel like you're on a trail even though you're on the street. So a combination of more trails, introducing these new cycle track separated bikeways, providing wider bike lanes with some striping enhancement, so there's some physical separation even just with paint. Bike boulevards, which is this idea that you'd still be sharing the road with the cars, but only on streets that are low speed and low volume, and so you feel really comfortable kind of mixing in, and it still feels as comfortable as a trail because it's just a really traffic calm street. And then critically making sure that there's a cross-barrier connections, and Brad talked about that concept. The level of traffic stress philosophy relies on the weakest link idea. So you can have all of these really great segments, but if there's a really difficult crossing, that you have to get across the whole thing as high stress. And so the concept here would be not just to make the segments low stress, but to really address a lot of those barriers too. And one of the, I think, pretty interesting infographics that we were able to create was just to tell this story in another way and to talk about this in terms of accessibility. So as a result of implementing this low-stress bike network, what do you get? So what would the kind of each individual Contra Costan experience as a result of this? So what this map tries to tell a story of is for any person starting a trip in Contra Costa, within 30 minutes, how many places could they get to on a low-stress facility? Right now and in the future, and that's the comparison. So right now, you get on your bike at any kind of random location in the county and try to ride in a low-stress way. This is the column of 14,000 jobs, 4 shopping centers, 20 parks, 12 schools, 1 heavy rail kind of BART Amtrak station. With the proposed low-stress network in the future, you can see that the magnitude of change in terms of for any one individual, for an average person traveling for 30 minutes on a low-stress facility, just the improved access that they'll have, the ability. And really when we think about mode shift and really wanting to encourage people to choose this as an option, it is about getting places, right, and being able to have that utilitarian trip swapped from a car over to a bike, for example. And this, we think, would really be able to encourage that. So most of that is going to be engineering type kind of physical implementations. The plan also has a series of support programs that are intended to help make sure that that engineering investment gets the best bang for the buck. So education, encouragement, enforcement, and of course evaluation, learning, and repeating and redoing. Wayfinding is a good example of that, making sure that if these facilities go in, sometimes you'll have to jog over a couple blocks to kind of navigate to the next good crossing or something. And so good wayfinding and intuitive directions will be an important part of that. So the plan then concludes with what the key roles for CCTA would need to be to support the implementation of this, and those are the plan itself and updating the plan and the policies associated with it, supporting local efforts. The real goal of this plan is to be a technical resource, a best practices document that doesn't need to be recreated by every single local jurisdiction. It can be just a resource everybody can refer to. And then supporting and funding local efforts, monitoring to make sure that the goals that are set out at the beginning are achieved. And then there's also suggested implementation actions for local jurisdictions and the variety of other agencies that have a stake, and in particular on the trail side of this. The plan includes a refresh of the funding sources. As Brad mentioned, there are several new funding sources that have come out since 2009, and so kind of by different roadway type, by different bikeway type, we talk about the type of funding that might be most suited for that. And then, of course, the big kind of sticker that goes associated with this, and just, I think, underscoring that this doesn't come without a cost. The $1.4 billion is the estimate associated with the plan, and that would be about a $1.2 billion shortfall under current funding availability. They are.
Well, there are a lot of them, and some of them will be expensive, trying to get over freeways or, say, building a Class 1 facility along Marsh Creek Road between Central and East County. That will be an expensive project. So I'm going to talk about next steps. Here's where we are now.
Can we go, I have a question, Madam Chair. Could you go back the cost one? There you go. And I'm sorry, I'm probably jumping ahead, Brad. When we look at those numbers, is the concept that we're going to wait till we get closer to the numbers before we do something, or are we going to look at particular areas in the county where we can do something with the dollars that are already set aside?
Well, the $1.4 billion is the estimated amount of
if we did everything.
To do everything that jurisdictions have identified.
Right.
And we think that we've got around $172 million just for bicycle, pedestrian, safe routes to school, TLC, complete streets kinds of projects. And that leaves us a shortfall. The money that $172 million will come in, and that means we have to make some choices about which projects, jurisdictions have to choose which project you can ask funding
So it
for.
sort of goes into what bicycles will, as a funding category, will follow what we've done with our major projects, is what I'm hearing you say, so that we can start addressing some of this. I mean, if we wait till we get 1.4 billion, or 1.2 billion, we're never going to get anything done.
No, we'll have to, it'll be incremental. There'll be step
Okay,
by
that's-
step, project by project. One of the implementation actions that we've got in the plan is to look at ways that we can consider complete streets needs as part of all the projects that the authority is involved in. We've been focused mostly on overseeing the construction of freeway project, but the authority is considering working with San Ramon on the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing at Bollinger Canyon. So, we're involved not just in helping to fund that project, but also to bring it to fruition and
Okay, thank
bring
you.
it to benefit the county. So the last thing I wanted to say is just that we're here at the draft plan, and we want to ask you to recommend to the full authority that you release it for public review. We want to do about 60 days, go out to all the RTPCs, post it on the website again to try to get more comments from the public, and then come back to you. We're scheduled to do that in July, so that we can then start working on the implementation actions. With that, if you have any questions or comments, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
Commissioner Roman?
My question had, I read through it all, and I was intrigued. I mean, I was especially focused on Oakley, obviously. What a surprise, huh? And there was this priority pedestrian areas, and I was trying to figure out. I mean, I saw the criteria that was listed for how they were developed, but who actually decided that would be a good location for a particular location should be highlighted and put on the map?
Well, the criteria were focused on forecast growth and the amount of the density of growth. Sometimes the mix of uses, retail uses plus jobs, retail uses plus housing. Because when you have the two close together, when destinations are close together, people are more likely, if they have safe facilities to do it, to walk between them. About a big chunk of the trips that are less than a mile long are done by people on foot. And that's what happens now in Contra Costa. And if you can get the facilities for people who have destinations within a mile from their home or their job, then you can get more people out on foot. I mean, it's not too bad to walk around here, for example, because there are sidewalks that are connected. There's a trail.
Right. Well, that's what brought this whole thing up. There was a particular location that's on Oakley Road, which is in the far western part of Oakley.
Right.
It's got four corners, Neroli, the major intersections, Neroli and Oakley Road. That part of town is between 1 and 10 acre homes. It's all country roads, no curb, no gutters, no sidewalks. But if you cross Oakley Road, it takes you across 160 and puts you at the backside of the BART station for Antioch's BART station. And even on that side of Antioch, it's all rural. It's on one side, the northern side, it's all vineyards. The other side is the field that has the BART station on. And right now, there's not any development. There may be some potential development on one of the corners in Oakley. So I'm wondering, as we look at this development, are there some expectations of cities working with this plan that we would require developers to include, where there's a nexus, to include bike lanes and things like that and wider sidewalks or whatever it takes? Because obviously it does make sense. I mean, walking there's not a big population. There'll never be any retail there. There'll never be any multifamily there in this particular location or in this part of town. So I'm just curious, as we look moving forward with this throughout all of us, as we're all going to have to look at this, and how much effort and money do we put into this to complete the goal here? But if at what level does it make sense and what level doesn't make sense? And doesn't it make sense? And this is going to where. Right, well, no, yeah, hopefully that's what we will be doing, but I'm just trying to figure out what kind of, from the plan's point of view, what kind of expectations of there are from each city that is identified where their PPAs are at, and for a lot of it, there's still a great deal of Oakley that's no curbs, no gutters, no sidewalks,
Yeah.
and it's fairly rural, and a lot of this, there's going to be adding bike lanes and curbs and gutters is going to be an expensive proposition.
Well, the priority for the plan is to try to focus pedestrian improvements in areas where we get the biggest bang for the buck, where we think that there are the destinations and the density nearby, where if you build it, more people will come to use the facility. And for the bikeway network, we're trying to build a backbone. It's not the only, they're not the only facilities that are needed to support biking in the county. Jurisdictions, and there's an appendix in the plan that has all the planned facilities that jurisdictions have identified in their various plans. And what we're thinking of them as kind of the meat on the backbone network. So, we want to get the backbone network because we want to connect to the communities. Bicyclists tend to take longer trips than because you can go so much further in the same amount of time as a pedestrian. They say less than 3 miles or less is a pretty normal bicycle trip. So the priorities are trying to get the backbone built, but also to add the flesh to those bones, and to try to support the local jurisdiction efforts to build out the plans that they have, and to try to get more of them to have new plans as well. The authorities funded some. I mentioned San Ramon's, a plan that's ongoing now. And I expect as we go along with the TLC program that we'll be funding more plans like that.
I got an answer for you, Kevin. The first thing I would suggest is, and I don't want to put this all on Scott Weiner, but man, he's front and center right now. You need to get a copy of SB 827 and SB 828. Because if you're near a metro center or what would you call it, a high propensity, a high value line, which that metro is now going to be, you're going to be a target for them. And the oddity to me is how long we've been screaming, hey, put the jobs out there if the housing's out there. They don't care. I can't tell you how many people live in Antioch and work San Francisco to the airport. Yet Burlingame at our ABAG meeting doesn't want to add a house, even though they put it on their PDA to get a PDA that they were going to build 4,700. If you've got flat land, if you've got buildable land and you're within a mile of that metro station, you probably won't even have a say on it after a while. Jennifer Hosterman had the greatest line of all. Why don't they just come down here and run our meetings for us? Because they're getting close. They're getting real close. I've been trying to use it because I can see now that, and I'm going to morph into something I'd like Brad to take a look at when we're doing these studies. I've always been intrigued by Gilbert's card for Easy Mile. And you have this bike path in Vichy, and here's the little Easy Mile run along with the walkers right next to them, and just as easy to put a biker. I'm wondering in the future if the bikers are going to be in that lane, or if it's going to change, or if we change it going forward to where these autonomous vehicles are part of the bike lane. So, something to consider as we're testing and whatever else we're doing, because I know where I'm at. That's why I want that bridge wider, is because if you run 20 of these little autonomous vehicles on Camino Ramon and you're stopping 10 lanes to let that thing go across, which Alex thinks they're going to do, I can't tell you how many calls we're going to get in the first 3 or 4 months. They're going to be after us and that's the future. we're going to be looking for denser and denser and denser and denser to make this work. And, you've been around a long time. I remember when Oakley was 1,500 people. What are you, 51,000? If not, you might be in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. That's what's happening out there, and you're a target. It was the same target when Freitas was talking about it. They're just, as you grow, they're going to take over your planning. So, yeah, get a tough skin and keep your eyes open. They're coming for you.
Any more questions or comments?
I'll move the item.
Is there any public comment? I'll remember it this time.
No, there's no public. Publicly.
Okay, there's no public. All right. That being said, we have a motion by Mr. Karen, Supervisor Commissioner Mitchoff, and Commissioner Hudson seconded, and so may we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? No? Okay. That would be, we're now up to other business, and is there any other business?
Can I ask a question? Terry Ann, I see, you don't all see this, but it says up here, meeting chair, you now have the timer with the lights and everything, and I know we have that in the board chambers and maybe some, is that something you bring in for the, is it built in somewhere and we can't see it, or is it something you're going to be bringing in? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
She has a timer.
Oh,
Runs the timer.
right, but it says here that there'll be a green light that goes on in 3 minutes and a 1 minute green light start flashing. You mean that's what you mean. And I think that's great. I think we need to have that
At the air district?
either taped to the podium for public speakers so they know what that means, or printed on our public speaking cards so that they know. Just so we'll know, the chair of the meeting will know, but they'll need to know that. Thank you.
All right. You want me to get it off? No business? Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. I would proudly say that the Auto No Moose is out on the street, and there were great speeches by Randy Iwasaki and our mayor and Alex Marin, and I don't know what it is about the press, but they're just looking for something negative. And I was amazed how this person was asked, well, will the public be able to write on this? To which he said, there's 30,000 public out here at the ranch that could write on. They just, I don't know. I guess they want something. But it was much fanfare, good donuts, a lot of coffee. I was impressed.
Were they superior?
No. The stuff we get at the Air District is far superior.
That's a joke. You knew that?
Yeah.
There's a TV show called Superior Donuts.
Oh, there is?
Yes.
Wow. I feel old.
I don't watch it, but
Randy?
Commissioners, so I just want to add to that. We had every major news outlet, including National CBS News. They were very interested in the technology and how it affects the public, how it can get to the underserved parts of our communities. And they're concerned about not having an operator. In our case, we've agreed that we'll have an operator during the test. We'll also have a wireless hookup to a comm center at Bishop Ranch. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, we were first to bring this technology to North America. We were first to get legislation to exempt us from a steering wheel, a brake pedal, and an operator. And we were first to get a license to operate in California a shared autonomous vehicle on public streets before their regulations came out. But it was, for us, it was never about being first. It's always about being safe. And so the questions that the media asks, everybody else is asking, and we just have to make sure that we have good answers, or our testing protocol will answer those questions. And so that's the process that we're taking. We weren't first in the nation. Las Vegas was first, but our vehicle has not been hit yet. So knock on wood, we're in good shape so far.
If I could add to that, yeah, the humor's not in that. That's one of the things I told this floater when he went around. I said, no, these questions have been asked. We were, Randy and I and I don't know, Ross and whoever, and one of these DOT people that we went into, I think it was Federal Highway, and they don't say a word, and you get a little worried, especially NHTSA when they start folding their arms and stuff like this. But they finally asked the question, I'll get behind this when some CEO of Google gets in the backseat of a car up Highway 1. Without batting an eye, Randy said, I'll do it today. Then we go to the next one. He says, I want to know what you're going to do when one of these things hits a tree. I go, that's easy. It was my fault. Council members are a dime a dozen. Get another one and keep moving. They just want to see that you're positive. Put the positive slant on it. We've thought of it. We're moving forward. What's the next generation? We've already been in the second generation. So, yeah, I think this is a big step. And I can tell you San Mateo today, Doug Kim wants it. And I go, get on it. Don't wait, because how many times have I told you this, Randy? Don't look back. Somebody's gaining on us.
Any more new business?
I forgot, yeah. There's a mobility summit coming up next week. Peter and I are going to it. And I got the wrong date on the mobility summit, so please send an email to Vanessa so that she can straighten it up. I told everybody the 20. Oh, good, thank you. But I mean, the interest is people are gaining interest on this. They know that if they turn their back, something new is going to be there while they're going after something 3 years old. Told the story also, Randy, 3 years ago at the APTA conference in Houston, we talked Chris Weeks into going to Houston. 400,000 square feet of all the new stuff. He walked out of there and said, this is all old stuff, we're going to Europe. And they bought 2 of these little things from Vichy. This year at APTA in October, Keolis, Easy Mile, running around, C&Gs almost passé. You swear it's gone. It's all electric and diesel. Can you imagine in Anaheim in 3 years where we're going to be? In 2020, when you go to the APTA conference, these things will be running around Disneyland.
Okay, that's future business. Okay.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, and, all right, I believe that we have come to the end of the agenda.
Karen, we would have been on the road by now.
And because I'm new, I kept you a few minutes longer for practice, but next week, we're on next time. Our regular next meeting will be April 4th at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody. We're adjourned.